This sees Michael Winterbottom writing and directing a satire that sees Steve Coogan playing Richard McCreadie, a self-made British millionaire whose retail empire ends up in a state of crisis after a public inquiry into the runnings of his business may tarnish his name and his image may never quite recover. So in billionaire style, McCreadie decides to put on a highly publicised party to celebrate his 60th birthday on the Greek island of Mykonos. Let's take a little listen to a clip.
This is your young man,
Yes,
no?
this is Francois.
Ah,
Very happy to meet you.
the pleasure's all mine, Francois.
No, it's François. Otherwise, I would be a girl.
Get it right, Mum.
Where are the children?
Finn sleeps all day, he's pale, he looks like a vampire. And Lily was here, but she's gone off with the reality TV show.
Oh, what's all that about? Why would you want your life splashed all over the telly, Francois?
Beats me.
Well, I think it's pretty good for her, actually. It gives her something to do and it keeps her grounded.
Keeps her grounded.
Yeah. If you look at the Kardashians, Kylie Jenner's got over 1 billion Instagram followers. She's on the cover of Forbes.
Well, then she must be a very good person, very successful.
She's richer than you, sweetie. And she's
That's
worked
not
a
true, is
lot.
it?
Yes, it is. It's actually
That
true.
can't be true.
She's richer than you.
So that was the clip from the movie. David, what are the Rotten Tomato scores?
So we don't have a audience score, but we do have a critic score of 59%. And for those of you who don't know what Rotten Tomatoes is, we did explain it last week. It's basically an online system that is used to aggregate scores. So the critics can rate the film from 1 star to 5 star, so can the audiences, and then it rounds those scores up and gives us an overall total. Anything over 50% is certified fresh, anything under 50% is certified rotten. And it gives you a really good idea of what the critics are thinking of a film, but also what the audiences are thinking of a film. Yep. And it's a really useful tool because sometimes audience scores can be really, really high and critic scores can be much lower, which shows you that critically the film hasn't been brilliantly well received, but audiences liked it. And other times you've got films that the critics really, really enjoy, but sometimes the audiences don't. And it's just a really useful tool to see the overall way a film has been received.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one had 58% on critics?
59% from the critics on Rotten
which is
Tomatoes.
not too bad.
No.
It's not been well received completely, but it's still certified fresh, as they say on Rotten Tomatoes.
As they say.
So I think it's really important to kickstart this review off by saying that this is a satire. We did say it in the bit at the beginning, but it's based loosely on Sir Philip Green. For those of you who don't know who Philip Green is, he was a big billionaire mogul who run multiple different retail fashion outlets under the Arcadia Group in the UK. And you've got in here David Mitchell playing a journalist who's hired to write McCreadie's biography. And it all appears to be a bit of a front to try and boost the credibility of McCreadie. But all of this is sort of shown in a bad light anyway during the course of the film, and you see all these different things coming into play with cost-cutting, money-making businesses in the world of fast fashion. And we're just introduced to lots of different backstories of McCreadie, which then ties up with the modern-day organisation of this great, big, spectacular party, David.
Yes, this big party in Mykonos, in a Greek island, where he's there to celebrate his birthday in lavish style. And he has a gladiator-themed event, meaning we have a Roman amphitheatre built from scratch, a caged lion, and enough Greek togas to put the cast of Gladiator to shame. This all creates a very lavish, in-your-face, over-the-top spectacle designed to give Sir Richard the appearance of a Greek emperor. It's all about him, and there's no subtlety in this film at all. It is very in-your-face, and it is all about Sir Richard.
It is, yeah. But there's so much other stuff going on at play here. There's all these different tangents that the film seems to veer off on, and some more serious than others. And the mix seems to, in my eyes, not work so fantastically. They don't all come together in this really rather well-received kind of movie. But what you do get is this rather contrived, loose plots throughout the film, which by the end of it does all tie up in a way. But during the course of the movie, that really didn't feel the way it was going to go.
Yeah.
I don't want to give too much away because I think it's worth going to see, and I will say that straight off the bat because it is a really important film to watch, I think. But it is the things in the background and the things in the foreground seem to be the wrong way round for me. I don't know if you got that same feeling or not.
Yeah, I sort of did. I mean, what I did like is the way the film starts. So the film starts with a series of very effective flashbacks, showing how Sir Richard built his fashion empire, and came close to ruins on many, many occasions.
Yeah.
And this was perhaps my personal highlight of the film, those early parts. It gave the viewer a really quick insight to the past. It updated us with the present. And also the journalist conducted some interviews with old friends, enemies and colleagues, which gave it a very documentary feel.
Yeah.
At times, engaging the audience and also enhancing the believability of what was unfolding on the screen.
So the thing that you're saying there, though, is it happened very early on in the film. But the way I remember it was that the journalist was interviewing a lot of these people and they were giving a history of what was happening, and it would go to those parts, you know, the history parts, and show you what McCreadie was like in those various points of the interviews, and that was interspersed throughout the film.
Yeah.
And that those parts were really, really well done. I really enjoyed it, but that wasn't what the film was about. The film was really about the things that were unfolding in the current time, and it just sort of didn't catch up with each other quick enough almost.
I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, the intertwinedness of those backstories with this journalist who kind of feels really rather irrelevant in the story, but very relevant at the end.
Yeah.
And it's this acceptance of what's going on in the background, I think.
Yeah, I mean, what the journalist is trying to do is show... So we've got the glitz, we've got the glamour, but what the journalist does is he goes, for example, to visit the sweatshops in Bangladesh, where we see where Sir Richard is making all of his clothing. And there's one particularly powerful scene where the journalist is then invited home with one of these ladies, and you see the abhorrent and awful living conditions that they're living in, working 12, sometimes 16-hour days for, I think it was, I might be wrong, but like £5 a day. And that really contrasted with the glitz and the glamour. And that's what the journalist did bring. He brought the film back down to earth and brought a gritty realism that I think the film needed. Because it was slightly confused. Was it a comedy? Was it a hard-hitting drama?
Well, again,
was it neither
it's
in
a
the end?
satire, but that is the point of the movie. But at the same time, it's David Mitchell's character that doesn't feel right. It's the journalist should be his discovery of what he's finding out in the background about these what do you call them again? The sweatshops, isn't it? So it's those bits where he seems to just still be the same bumbling character that just lets everything brush under the carpet. And as a journalist who's investigating these things, you kind of feel like that's not the right kind of guy to be doing it.
Yeah.
And even if it was somebody else playing this character, would he still be that bumbling fool? But I just felt like as it was David Mitchell playing it, kind of just didn't work for me at all. The ending with him kind of letting everything go, that's all I'm going to say, kind of felt like the wrong thing to be doing, but I understood it. And I think that was a real good insight into all of our mentality into what's going on in the fast fashion world, if that makes any sense. If you've seen the film, you'll understand it a lot better than what I'm explaining there, but I don't want to give too much away because I feel like you do need to see it.
Yeah, I feel like David Mitchell's character was very relevant and very needed, but almost like David Mitchell was badly cast. Yeah. I'm not saying he gives a bad performance, he just really plays a very similar role to himself. Yeah. And he didn't really feel like he fit in the overall aim or piece of the film.
Yeah, and Michael Winterbottom is the director here, and he's had a lot of success on the small screen and a lot of success on the big screen. And I haven't actually seen some of his bigger movies, but I have seen The Trip with Rob Brydon and Steve Coogan, both really great actors. And of course, he's working again here with Steve Coogan here, we're playing Richard McCreadie, and I thought he was brilliant. I really did. I felt that he brought, for a slimy, self-entitled character, he brought a sense of real entertainment to the role, even though it's not, you still got that horrible, cringe-worthy performance, but you still were entertained by it. Sacha Baron Cohen was actually supposed to be playing...
Yeah, I had that in fact as well, yeah.
Well, he was supposed to be playing Sir Richard McCreadie, and I feel like he would have brought a very different tone to the entire overall feeling of the film, where Coogan's done a much better job, I think, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the acting, I think Steve Coogan was great. In terms of the direction, I did feel like Michael Winterbottom was a little confused. I didn't know whether he wanted this to be a comedy, which it definitely was. I'd like it to make it very clear to the listeners that I laughed out loud. Craig was with me in the cinema. I laughed out loud a number of times, but I wasn't sure if he wanted it to be a hard-hitting commentary on the greed of the world's richest, or if at times he was like glorifying their actions as opposed to condemning them.
No.
And
for someone who's seen like The Trip and other stuff, he always seems to have this thing running in the background, and it's always the hard hitting stuff. So he does want to show you that hard hitting stuff, and I think he does that very, very well with how he sums up the rest of the film with it, when it comes to that big ending.
Yeah.
And I think he really does hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's a whole Oedipus thing going on in the background as well, which, if you don't know what that is, look it up, because it makes total sense with things coming round in full circle. And I think he does a really good job with bringing that thing in the background to the forefront, that fast fashion thing that everybody seems to be brushing under the carpet, and the thing that we kind of keep alluding to in some respects. But I think he does a much better job with rounding it off and having that thing running in the background. And again, it is a satire, David. It is that comedy.
I feel like I'm being told off at school here.
No, but it is though. It is that comedy. It is the comic elements mixed with the hard hitting stuff brings that satire together. And we've seen plenty of satires before where it is humorous and hard hitting. But this one, I get what you're saying. It didn't hit hard enough almost. Then again, we came out of the cinema and we were all talking about it, and we were giving it, and it would make us think about all those issues.
The hard hitting stuff did come right at the very end. That's all I'll say. And to me, it almost felt like a little bit too late. If I think of something like Jojo Rabbit, that had comedy and hard-hitting moments like littered throughout the film. This, I felt it was much more like a comedy. Like, for me, the first 70 to 80% of this film I loved. I just think it started to, after one pivotal moment in the film, I just felt like it started to unravel a bit. So it was like, this is what we're going for. Or maybe we've had too much comedy. Now we need to have a hard-hitting message at the end. Yeah. And it just didn't quite work. But I still really, really enjoyed this film.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is really entertaining, and I do get exactly what you mean, because I'm almost the reverse of you. I enjoyed the latter part of the film with the hard hitting stuff a lot more rather than the beginning stuff with all of the history stuff juxtaposed with the journalist going to the foreign countries and you seeing, almost visually seeing it, but not feeling it through the character. And I kind of felt it a bit more near to the end. And it is entertaining. It was great fun to watch, and then left you feeling very sick almost about what's going on in the world, and really makes you want to try and change the way that you shop for things almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And the contrast of, we have some scenes in Monaco, and the contrast between Monaco and Bangladesh, those two things literally running side by side was really hard-hitting and powerful. And what about those Syrian refugees
exactly,
as well?
And that's another theme that he adds to the film. And it's almost, there's just too much going on in this film.
Yeah, so Sir Richard's obviously about to have this big party, but on the beach where his house or hotel, I'm not quite sure where he was, actually it was his own villa, wasn't it? It was his own house, was overlooking this lovely little Greek beach, and there were some Syrian refugees who landed there, and he goes out of his way to go over to them, not to help them. Bear in mind, this man could give them some loose change, which would be nothing to him, and he could change all of their lives. And all he's concerned about is getting them off of his beach. I found that one of the most abhorrent, disgusting, soul-destroying elements of the film, that there's these human beings that have had to flee their country for terrible political reasons, trying to find a safer and better place to live. He's a billionaire and he can't even help them out.
No,
it was
then
terrible.
He goes to try and help them out, doesn't he? But it's a way of moving them off the beach so that
deceiving them,
exactly, and he gets them into basically building the amphitheatre for him, or finishing it off anyway, and it's that theme of slavery running through it again.
Yeah,
and
there was a big theme of slavery running through
exactly.
there as well.
So there's so much going on in this film, and it's definitely worth a watch. And I think I'm going to have to watch it again because there is just so much to pick up on. But yeah, it was great. I mean, I might as well just ask you the question now.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to touch upon?
No, I think I'm good. And wait, there is some bits, isn't there? The technical aspects of the film, the CGI bit. Go on.
So, I mean, for me, the CGI line didn't work. I didn't particularly like it. I thought it was quite distracting. But again, I mean, you wouldn't be able to have a real lion, so you're stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place. But also the costumes as well. The costume design was brilliant. There was nothing, sensational about the cinematography, but there were some lovely shots of Monaco in there. There were some nice shots of the Greek island, which contrasted, like I said, with the sweatshops in Bangladesh. But overall, I thought it was a very, very solid film.
I will just say I disagree with you about with the lion. I felt it to be a slightly more impressive than it was. I mean, it was no Jungle Book and it wasn't Lion King or anything, but it served the purpose in the overall story and rounded the film off massively. And I wasn't too distracted by it. I mean, it was shot in more or less in darkness. This scene, it was a darkly lit part of the film, and it certainly looked a lot better in that sense. If it was broad daylight, I think you would have been able to really tell how bad the CGI was. But I found it wasn't too off-putting for me at all. Anyway, David, Greed, is it worth it?
Yes, look, I think there are problems with this film. I don't think it's a completely rounded piece. I don't think the hard-hitting drama and the comedy merge together as well as the director might think they do. But overall, I laughed a lot. I did come out impacted by it, and it's a film that I would thoroughly recommend watching.
I completely agree with you. Completely, 100%.
So, Craig, Greed, is it worth it?
Yes.
That's good.